The clinking of champagne glasses filled the private dining room at Boulevard Kitchen in Vancouver. My son-in-law stood at the head of the table, his arm draped possessively around my daughter's shoulders, addressing the 30-some guests gathered to celebrate Sophie's promotion to senior marketing director. I sat near the back, still wearing my worn fleece jacket because I'd come straight from the community center where I teach coding classes to newcomers. "I'd like to thank everyone who supported Sophie on this journey," Marcus announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of self-importance I'd come to recognize over the past 4 years. The Patels, of course, for mentoring her through the reorg. The Johnstons, for putting in a good word with the executive team. And somewhere back there, he gestured vaguely in my direction, we have Sophie's father, Robert, still keeping busy teaching his little computer classes to immigrants. At least Sophie has me to provide real financial stability, not someone who thinks he's still relevant in tech. Polite laughter rippled through the room. Sophie looked down at her plate. I took another sip of my ginger ale and watched as Marcus basked in the attention he so desperately craved. "My name is Robert Chen. I'm 62 years old." And that moment at my daughter's promotion dinner was the beginning of the end for Marcus Brennan. Let me take you back to where this all started. I came to Canada in 1985 with my parents and younger sister. I was 23 years old, fresh out of university in Saigon, with a degree in electrical engineering and exactly $200 in my pocket. We landed in Montreal in February. I'd never seen snow before. I'd never felt cold like that, the kind that cuts through your jacket and settles in your bones. My first job was washing dishes at a Vietnamese restaurant in Chinatown. My degree meant nothing here. At night, I taught myself computer programming using books from the public library. This was before the internet, before YouTube tutorials. Just me, those books, and an old Commodore 64 I bought used for $150. By 1989, I'd saved enough to buy my first real computer. By 1992, I'd built my first piece of software, a simple accounting program for small businesses. By 1995, I'd started Chen Systems with my friend, David Nguyen. We worked out of David's basement in NDG, building custom software for local companies. Then in 1998, something happened that changed everything. We developed a cybersecurity protocol that could detect intrusions in real time. It wasn't revolutionary by today's standards, but back then, it was ahead of its time. We patented it. Within 2 years, we had contracts with banks, hospitals, and government agencies across Canada. By 2010, Chen Systems had offices in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary. We employed over 400 people. When a Silicon Valley firm offered us $500 million for the company in 2015, David and I took it. We were tired. We'd built something meaningful, and it was time to let someone else take it to the next level. But here's the thing about me. The money never changed who I was. I still lived in the same modest townhouse in Côte-des-Neiges that my late wife, Mai, and I had bought when Sophie was 5 years old. I still drove my 2004 Honda Civic. I still shopped at the same Vietnamese grocery store on St. Laurent where I'd been going for 30 years. Mai passed away 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer. She fought for 2 years, but in the end, the cancer won. When she died, a part of me went with her. We'd been married for 28 years. She was my best friend, my partner, my everything. After the funeral, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd sold the company, I had more money than I could ever spend. But what was the point of any of it without Mai? Sophie was 25 when her mother died. She took it hard. Maybe I wasn't there for her the way I should have been. Maybe I retreated too far into my grief. Whatever the reason, a distance grew between us that I never quite figured out how to bridge. When she met Marcus 3 years later, I had reservations immediately. He was charming, certainly, good-looking, well-spoken, worked as a senior finance manager at some investment firm downtown. But there was something about him that felt performative, like he was always calculating his next move, always aware of how he appeared to others. "Dad, you're being paranoid," Sophie told me when I gently expressed my concerns. "Marcus is ambitious. That's a good thing. You were ambitious too, weren't you?" I wanted to tell her that there's a difference between ambition and ego. I wanted to tell her that a man who talks about other people's failures as much as Marcus did is usually hiding his own insecurities. But I kept quiet. Sophie was a grown woman. She had to make her own choices. They got married 4 years ago at the Ritz-Carlton in Montreal. I paid for everything. $85,000. Marcus's parents contributed nothing. His father, I later learned, had filed for bankruptcy twice, and his mother was living on disability payments. At the wedding reception, Marcus barely mentioned me in his speech. He spent 10 minutes talking about his own journey to success, and added at the end, and of course, Sophie's dad, who helped out with some of the costs tonight. My sister, Linda, who'd flown in from Calgary with her family, was furious. "Robert, why do you let him treat you like that? You paid for this entire wedding." "It's Sophie's day," I said. "I won't cause a scene." That became my pattern over the next few years. I won't make a scene. I won't cause problems. I'll just keep my head down and hope that eventually Marcus will show his true colors and Sophie will see him for what he really is. The problem was, Marcus was very good at hiding his true colors, at least from Sophie. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus convinced Sophie to ask me for a loan, $40,000, to help with the down payment on a condo in Yaletown. I gave it to them without hesitation. 3 months later, Marcus needed another $25,000 for investment opportunities that would set them up for life. I hesitated that time, but Sophie pleaded, "Dad, please. Marcus says this could be our chance to build real wealth." I gave them the money. I never saw a penny back. Then came the request for me to co-sign on their mortgage when they decided the Yaletown condo wasn't prestigious enough and wanted to move to a house in Shaughnessy. Then the emergency when Marcus's Audi needed replacing and he needed $30,000 for a new BMW because image matters in finance. Then the vacation to the Maldives that they desperately needed for their mental health after a stressful quarter. Each time, I said yes. Each time, Marcus took the money without a thank you. And each time, Sophie drifted a little further away from me. The promotion dinner incident happened 9 months ago. After Marcus made his comment about my computer classes and how at least Sophie had him for real financial stability, I excused myself and went outside. I stood in the parking lot, looking out at the Vancouver skyline, the lights reflecting off the harbor, and I thought about what would you do? I whispered to her, the way I often did when I needed guidance. The answer came clearly, as if she were standing beside me. "You've been enabling this for years, Robert. You've been so afraid of losing Sophie that you've let Marcus walk all over you. It's time to stop." I went back inside, found Sophie, and asked if we could talk privately. "Dad, not now. We're in the middle of the celebration." "It can't wait," I said firmly. We stepped into the restaurant's lobby. Sophie crossed her arms, looking annoyed. "I'm cutting you off," I said. "What? No more loans. No more co-signing. No more bailouts. I've given you and Marcus over $180,000 in the past 4 years, and I haven't received so much as a thank you. I'm done." Sophie's face flushed red. "Dad, you can't be serious. Marcus just got passed over for a promotion. We're struggling right now. The mortgage on the Shaughnessy house is killing us." "Then maybe Marcus should learn to live within his means." "This is so typical of you," Sophie snapped. "You've never liked Marcus. You've always been jealous of his success, his confidence. You're just a bitter old man who can't stand seeing someone younger and more accomplished than you." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood there, speechless, as my daughter, my only child, looked at me with contempt. "Sophie," I said quietly, "do you really believe that?" "I believe what I see, Dad. I see someone who lives in a rundown townhouse, drives a car from 2004, and spends his time teaching free classes to immigrants because he has nothing better to do with his life. Meanwhile, Marcus is actually building something. He's actually making a difference in the business world." I nodded slowly. "All right, if that's how you see me, then I suppose there's nothing more to say." I left the restaurant without saying goodbye to anyone. I drove home through the rain, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my chest tight with pain. For the next 6 weeks, I heard nothing from Sophie. No calls, no texts, no emails. It was as if I had ceased to exist. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning in March, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Chen, this is Detective Sarah Williams with the Vancouver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling about your daughter, Sophie Brennan. I need you to come down to the station to answer some questions." My heart stopped. "Is she all right? What happened?" "She's fine physically, sir, but she's been named as a person of interest in an embezzlement investigation involving her husband, Marcus Brennan. Can you come in this afternoon?" I was at the police station within 2 hours. Detective Williams was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led me to an interview room and laid out the situation. Marcus had been stealing from his company for the past 2 years. He'd been creating fake vendor accounts, authorizing payments to shell companies he controlled, and pocketing the money. The total amount stolen was estimated at $3.7 million. "We believe your daughter may have unknowingly facilitated some of the transactions," Detective Williams said. "Her signature appears on several authorization documents. We need to determine whether she was a willing participant or if her husband was using her." "Sophie would never knowingly participate in fraud," I said. "She's not that kind of person." "With all due respect, Mr. Chen, people do surprising things when they're under the influence of someone they trust. We've seen it many times." I thought about the past 4 years, the money requests, the way Marcus had slowly isolated Sophie from everyone who cared about her, the way he'd convinced her that her own father was nothing more than a jealous old man teaching little computer classes. "What can I do to help?" I asked. "We're building a case against Mr. Brennan. If your daughter cooperates and provides testimony against him, the Crown may be willing to consider that she was manipulated and reduce or drop any potential charges. But right now, she's refusing to talk. She's convinced that Marcus is innocent and that this is all a misunderstanding." I closed my eyes. "She's protecting him. That's our assessment." "Yes." "Can I see her?" They let me into the interview room where Sophie was waiting. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying, her hair disheveled. When she saw me, her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" "I came to help." "Help? You're probably thrilled about this. Finally, proof that Marcus is the terrible person you always said he was." I sat down across from her. "Sophie, I'm not here to say I told you so. I'm here because you're my daughter and you're in serious trouble." "I'm not in trouble. Marcus didn't do anything wrong. Someone at his company is setting him up. Probably someone jealous of his success." "Sophie, listen to me. The police have evidence. Bank records, email trails, witness statements. This is real." "No." She shook her head violently. "No, I don't believe it. Marcus loves me. He wouldn't do something like this. Marcus has been using you. He's been using both of us. Every dollar I gave you went into funding his lifestyle. Every document you signed made you complicit in his crimes." "That's not true." "Then, explain the authorization forms. Explain why your signature is on documents, approving payments to companies that don't exist." Sophie's face crumpled. "I didn't. I just signed what he told me to sign. He said it was paperwork for our mortgage refinancing, for investments. I didn't know. I believe you. But the police need to believe you too. And the only way that happens is if you tell them everything. Cooperate. Testify against Marcus." "I can't do that. He's my husband. He's a criminal who was willing to let you take the fall for his crimes." We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Sophie looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. For everything I said at the restaurant. For all the terrible things I've thought about you. I was so blind." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We can talk about that later. Right now, we need to focus on getting you out of this mess." Over the next 3 weeks, I hired the best criminal defense lawyer in Vancouver. Her name was Jennifer Park, and she cost me $950 an hour, worth every penny. Jennifer negotiated a deal with the Crown. Sophie would provide full cooperation and testimony against Marcus in exchange for immunity from prosecution. It wasn't an easy decision. Sophie still had complicated feelings about her husband, but in the end, she agreed. The trial was scheduled for September. In the meantime, Marcus was denied bail due to flight risk. He was being held at the North Fraser Pretrial Center, and from what I heard through Jennifer, he was not handling incarceration well. About 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, I received a visitor at my home. It was a man I'd never met before. Late 50s, well-dressed, expensive watch. Mr. Chen, my name is Gregory Patel. I believe you know my wife, Anjali. She mentored your daughter at the firm. The Patels, the couple Marcus had thanked at the promotion dinner. I know of them, I said. What can I do for you? May I come in? I led him to my small living room. He looked around at my modest surroundings with barely concealed surprise. Forgive me, he said, but this isn't quite what I expected. What did you expect? Well, considering you founded Chen Systems and sold it for $500 million, I assumed you'd live somewhere more substantial. I smiled. People often make assumptions about me based on what they think wealth should look like. I've never been interested in impressing anyone. Gregory set down his coffee cup. Mr. Chen, I'll be direct. My wife invested $400,000 with Marcus Brennan. It was her inheritance from her parents. He convinced her it was a guaranteed return investment. It's gone. All of it. I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because I want to make sure Marcus Brennan pays for what he's done. Not just legally, but personally. I want him to understand the lives he's destroyed. I leaned back in my chair. The trial will take care of that. Will it? A few years in prison and then he's out, free to rebuild while my wife suffers from the loss of her parents' legacy? Mr. Patel, I understand your anger. I share it. But revenge isn't something I'm interested in. The law will deal with Marcus. My focus is on helping my daughter rebuild her life. He looked disappointed. I had hoped you would see things differently. I'm sorry to disappoint you. But I've learned that destroying other people doesn't heal your own wounds. It just spreads the damage. He left shortly after. I never saw him again. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Sophie testified on the 5th day. She walked into that courtroom looking pale and terrified, but she spoke clearly and honestly about everything Marcus had done. She described how he'd manipulated her, isolated her from family and friends, and used her trust to facilitate his crimes. Marcus's defense lawyer tried to paint her as a willing participant, but Jennifer had prepared her well. By the time Sophie stepped down from the witness stand, even some of the jurors looked sympathetic. Marcus was found guilty on all counts: fraud over $5,000, theft, money laundering, breach of trust. The sentence was 15 years in federal prison. When the verdict was read, Marcus turned and looked at me from across the courtroom. His face twisted with rage. "This is your fault," he snarled. "You turned her against me. You poisoned her mind because you couldn't stand that I was more successful than you." I said nothing. I just looked at him. This man who had mocked me for teaching immigrants to code, who had convinced my daughter I was a jealous old man, who had nearly destroyed both our lives. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, no vindication. Just a profound sadness for all the lives he had damaged. After the trial, Sophie moved in with me. She was broke. Marcus had drained their joint accounts before his arrest. She was also deeply depressed. Some days, she couldn't get out of bed. Some nights, she cried for hours. I was patient with her. I made her pho every morning, the way her mother used to make it. I drove her to her therapy appointments. I sat with her in the small backyard in the evenings, watching the sunset, not saying much, just being there. Slowly, gradually, she began to heal. One evening, about 4 months after the trial, Sophie came into the living room where I was reading. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." She sat down across from me. "Why didn't you ever tell me about Chen Systems? Why did you let me believe you were just, I don't know, teaching computer classes for fun?" I set my book aside. "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have. When your mother and I came here, we had nothing. We built our life together from scratch. But we were happy. We had each other. That was enough. But $500 million, Dad, that's not something small to keep secret." "No, it isn't. And maybe I was wrong to hide it from you. But I saw how Marcus talked about money, how he measured people's worth by their bank accounts. I didn't want you to become like that. And I didn't want to give him another reason to stick around. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Do you think he would have treated you differently if he'd known? Absolutely. Men like Marcus worship success. If he'd known I was wealthy, he would have been bowing and scraping instead of mocking me. But that's exactly why I didn't tell him. I wanted to see his true character. And you can only do that when people think you have nothing to offer. And what did you see? I saw a man who was cruel to those he considered beneath him. A man with no integrity, no genuine love for anyone but himself. I saw the worst kind of person, Sophie. And I'm sorry you had to learn that lesson the hard way. She started to cry then. Not the desperate sobbing of the early months, but a quieter kind of tears that come with acceptance. I wasted so many years, she said. I chose him over you. I believed his lies. I reached over and took her hand. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. How can you forgive me so easily? Because you're my daughter. Because I love you. And because holding on to anger only poisons the person holding it. We sat together for a long time after that, not speaking, just being present with each other. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. 8 months later, Sophie started working again. Not in marketing this time. She'd lost her taste for the corporate world. Instead, she came to volunteer at the community center where I teach. She started helping with administrative work, then began teaching basic digital literacy to newcomers. That's where she met Thomas. He was one of my students, a 35-year-old high school teacher from Syria who'd come to Canada 2 years earlier with his elderly mother. He was quiet, thoughtful, with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. He'd been a literature teacher in Damascus before the war forced them to flee. I noticed the way Sophie looked at him during class, the way she'd find excuses to help him with his coding assignments, the way she'd laugh at his jokes. When she first told me she'd gone for coffee with him, I was worried. After everything with Marcus, I was protective of her in a way I'd never been before. But the first time I really talked to Thomas, I knew he was different. He didn't care about money or status. When he found out who I was, his reaction was simple. Sophie told me you sold a big company. That's impressive, Mr. Chen. But what I respect more is that you use your time to help people like me. Not everyone with your success would do that. They got married last spring in a small ceremony in my backyard. Sophie wore a simple white dress, and I walked her down the aisle with tears streaming down my face. Thomas's mother, who spoke no English, held my hand during the ceremony and smiled at me with such warmth that I didn't need words to understand what she was saying. At the reception, I stood to give a toast. The 50 or so guests fell silent. I'm not much of a speech maker, I began. Most of you know that. I've always believed actions matter more than words. But today, I want to say something to my daughter. I turned to face her. She was holding Thomas's hand, her eyes already glistening. Sophie, the past few years have been the hardest of your life. You faced betrayal, public humiliation, and the complete collapse of everything you thought you knew. Lesser people would have given up, but you didn't. You rebuilt yourself piece by piece, day by day. The woman I see before me today is stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than ever before. I paused, my voice threatening to break. Your mother would be so proud of you. I know I am. I turned to Thomas. And Thomas, thank you for seeing her the way I've always seen her. Thank you for being the kind of man who values character over status. Take care of her. Thomas stood and shook my hand. I will, Mr. Chen. I promise. The rest of the evening was filled with laughter, dancing, and stories. At one point, my sister Linda cornered me near the dessert table. You know, I never thought I'd see Sophie happy again after everything that happened, she said. You did good, Robert. I didn't do anything. She did the hard work. You gave her a safe place to land. That's everything. 3 months ago, Sophie told me she's pregnant. A little girl, due in May. She wants to name her Mai, after her mother. I cried when she told me. Not from sadness, from joy, from the overwhelming sense that life, despite all its cruelty and unfairness, still finds ways to offer us moments of grace. I'm 62 years old now. I spend my days teaching coding at the community center, tending my small garden, and preparing for the arrival of my granddaughter. I've already started building her crib, by hand, using wood I selected myself from a local mill. Sometimes late at night, I talk to Mai. I tell her about everything that's happened, about Sophie's recovery, about Thomas and his mother, about the baby on the way. I like to think she's listening somewhere, smiling at how things turned out. Last week, I received a letter. It was forwarded to me by Jennifer Park. The letter had been sent from Kent Institution, a federal prison in Agassiz, British Columbia. It was from Marcus. Mr. Chen, the letter began. I've had a lot of time to think about my choices and the people I hurt. I know you have no reason to forgive me, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I understand now. I understand why you never revealed your wealth. I understand why you watched and waited. I understand that I failed every test you never told me I was taking. I treated you with contempt because I thought you were beneath me. I mocked you for teaching immigrants when you'd built something I could never build. I took your money and turned your daughter against you because I was weak and insecure. Prison has a way of stripping away all your illusions about yourself. I have nothing now. No money, no status, no family. I only have the knowledge of who I really am and what I really did. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see myself clearly now. The letter was signed simply, Marcus. I read it several times. Then I showed it to Sophie. She read it without expression, then handed it back to me. Do you think he means it? I asked. I don't know, she said. And honestly, I don't care. He's part of my past. I've moved on. I nodded. That's probably the healthiest attitude. What about you? Are you going to write back? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to tell Marcus exactly what I thought of him. Another part wanted to offer some words about redemption being possible. In the end, I did neither. I put the letter in a drawer and left it there. Some things don't need a response. Some things just need to be acknowledged and released. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole experience, it's that the people who truly value you will recognize your worth, regardless of what you drive, what you wear, or where you live. And the people who judge you based on those things will eventually reveal their true nature. Marcus called me irrelevant at my daughter's promotion dinner. He looked at my old Honda and my modest townhouse and decided I was beneath him. He never bothered to look deeper. He never bothered to ask questions. He never bothered to see the human being standing in front of him. That was his mistake. And in the end, it cost him everything. As for me, I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm surrounded by people who love me for who I am. I'm at peace with my past and hopeful for my future. And I'm about to become a grandfather for the first time. Not bad for someone who teaches little computer classes to immigrants.